All right, I recorded my screen, but I had the wrong screen. So I was thinking recently, and I've been trying to find people to help me with this, and I've been asking around to see the best way to go about this. But when I was helping Mariah set up her laptop, I said I will send you a laptop, and it will have whatever you want installed on it. You know, just like ready to go. So she gave me a list of stuff to install on Ubuntu, and Ubuntu is pretty cool because they have a decent foundation, but they're not quite there. And it's mostly due to GNOME because GNOME kind of sucks. KDE would be a lot better option if they had a real on-screen keyboard. And I've talked to Richie about this. He seems to understand that I need a full keyboard layout in order to help people with low mobility operate things like a terminal. So until you have GJS OSK installed on GNOME, you aren't able to perform a full installation as an end user. You still need a caregiver to help you through the initial setup. You may be able to do it yourself depending on your level of paralysis or low mobility or whatever, you know, but that's not really a suitable option. So I'm like, okay, well, what distributions kind of work on this? And there is a Debian accessibility spin that may have a live GUI installer, but I don't really want Debian because I need PPAs, and PPAs are more meant for Ubuntu. So I'm like, okay, well, I can use Ubuntu and just repackage GNOME without the branding, so like the GNOME meta package. And I could do that, but then you're stuck with snaps, and snaps are fucking AIDS, man. Like, they fucking suck so badly. So like snaps, I was able to brick them in like 10 minutes. I was able to like permanently stick Steam on my computer. That was a real issue. So I'm like, okay, we're going with Mint. And Mint obviously has access to the Ubuntu repositories, but it also and it supports PPAs, which I need for Waydroid. And so this distribution I'm thinking of, I'm going to call it Mariah OS, named after Mariah. And but that's just like a project title. If it ended up becoming like an official spin of anything, that'd be a different story. I'd be one, I would have branding, but two, I'd be in a different team. So I'll propose it to Mint later on. They said for right now, just remove the branding and you're good to go. But I want to make an Ubuntu based distribution that is like set up for accessibility out of the gate, you know. Now it's not going to be all accessibility. This is going to be specifically for low mobility users because eyesight is like a huge spectrum of issues. Like, you could either need high contrast, you could need low contrast, you could need specific magnifier, you could need lower magnification, you could need DPI scaling, you could not need DPI scaling. There's a lot of different shit that goes into eyesight that I'm not really willing to fuck around with because I only know a few people that are into it, and they work on KDE. So I'm going with GNOME for this. Their magnifier kind of sucks, so we're leaving out eyesight in this. We can do like DPI scaling, and that's about it. Whatever GNOME has for magnifier accessibility, that's about what you're gonna get. But for right now, I'm going for a low mobility distro. And it's been kind of funny actually talking to people about it because I just kind of spammed the link all over the place, right? To my Mastodon post about it, where I said we're going to deviate a bit from the Debian accessibility spins by not using ncurses. We're going to have a fully accessible installer. And that's not too hard to do because the Cinnamon installer, or yeah, actually, I wonder how that's going to work on Mint. Whatever installer they use, we're going to have an on-screen keyboard so that you'd be able to operate it as an end user. Not super hard to do, pretty simple. And what I'm hoping for is for the caregivers use to be kind of minimized. You know, I want them to just like plug in the USB, turn on the computer, select the boot drive, which kind of confused people. They were like, why do you need to select the boot drive? And I said, well, usually a computer isn't going to default to the flash drive. And if you do that on a computer that needs to be accessed by somebody with low mobility, they're not going to be able to get into the BIOS later because you don't have an on-screen keyboard on the motherboard specifically for their BIOS. So that's obviously part of it. But I get a lot of comments from people saying, why do you need this? Why do you need that? And I'm like, look, I know my project's goals. I know the requirements because I'm the one setting it up, obviously. Like, yeah, it would be great if I just didn't have to use these things. If I just didn't have requirements, yeah, that'd be fucking fantastic. But I do have these requirements. Why would you, like, seriously? Because you get all these comments that say, why don't you just use the Debian accessibility spin? Because I need all this other shit that Debian doesn't offer. Why don't you just use, or why don't you just send an merge request? Because I already asked, and their response was, why do you need this? What's wrong with what's already there? So while I'm asking for these changes, I'm also making the changes myself because honestly, not every distribution can be fully accessibility focused. And that's what I'm looking to change, is that there will be one that's modern and makes use of modern software, which is something that I didn't like about Debian. Was their shit's just too old and their accessibility spin wasn't really meant for what I'm doing, because a couple of the goals that we have is obviously on-screen keyboard, so you need that GNOME extension already installed. You also need Wayland because you need to be using Waydroid. And what Waydroid does is Android applications are written with touch in mind. So they will have obviously a much more accessible interface for this use case. So Waydroid is important. That means you're going to need a PPA. And once you do that, then you have more accessible software. So this project doesn't seem super difficult. There's actually a few things that have been suggested, like using LiveBuild or Cubic, but I think LiveBuild is going to be the best option because then it's maintainable later on, and I want this to be a pretty automated build system where it just builds the ISO and you're good to go for the next version. Cubic will require that I like to root into everything every release, and that's gonna be a pain. So if you are interested in a project like that, let me know. I'll put all my socials in here, however you want to contact me, because I am looking for people that know how to edit an Ubuntu ISO, or in this case Linux Mint, and who would be willing to maintain a project like this. It is going to be one of those things where I have all the goals in mind and I just need them implemented, basically. So, but the topic of the video was I'm getting kind of tired of people that, because I don't really do a whole lot of development, but you always hear these stories about people saying, why do you need this? Why do you need to do that? Just do something else. Well, I don't personally need that. And it's like, okay, well, this distribution is for people that have low mobility. So unless you're fucking Stephen Hawking over here, I don't really give a shit what you think. Like, I don't care what your personal use case is. This is obviously for people that are not you. And that was what I was telling Sprungles from Accretion OS was, yeah, now that you've quit this project, you want one that maybe like people can be a bit less critical of, because the problem with Accretion OS was there was really no goal. I mean, like, it didn't really make any sense. They were basically repeating work that CachyOS had already done for them, and it just didn't end up making sense in the end to continue on with it. And I was always asking them, what the fuck is the point of this distribution? So I got Sprungles and I said, hey, if you don't mind working on this instead, there would actually be a purpose to this project. I have actual goals in mind, and I have a use case where nobody else is doing it. As far as I know, I've asked around. Nobody seems to know any distributions that do exactly what I'm trying to do. So I'm like, why don't you work on this? And then once we have this set up, it should eventually mature and it should be automated from then on. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And I do think it's a good project to work on. So I am looking for people that kind of know what they're doing, or are willing to learn what to do, because I got no fucking clue. I just have the project's goals in mind. So if accessibility distributions are your thing, you want what I imagine is going to be a pretty simple project to work on. This would be something you could look to, and you can put it on your resume or something. I don't know. All right, see you. Thanks.